Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Keeping It Real with Sue. I have not been on here for a long time and don't really have a lot of good reasons, but I thought I'd come back on here to keep it real with you today because I was diagnosed a while ago with a very rare disorder. I don't know if you call it disorder or disease, but it's called achalasia. And you spell it Achalasa. I had no clue, never heard of it before in my life until last December. So achalasia is a swallowing issue, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you like a timeline. I noticed probably July and August that I was having some challenges sometimes swallowing, and I would just be eating and then all of a sudden it would be like, oh, I can't swallow that down. And I remember the first or the second time I noticed it, I was eating a hamburger and I was trying to eat fast because I was on my way somewhere, and I was like, forget it. I couldn't even swallow it. And it was like, I remember, I think that was towards the end of August. That was the first time I remember having to throw food away because I couldn't eat it, and just getting it down was almost impossible. So I tried to drink and I thought, well, I'll just grab something to eat later. As I began to share it with a few of my friends, I'd say, man, I've had some really interesting swallowing issues lately, and everybody's got a diagnosis for you. Have you ever noticed that? You tell somebody something and one of my friends was like, oh, Sue, I've had that problem. I have hiatal hernia and that causes me to have swallowing issues sometimes. And another friend of mine was like, oh, my mom had that for a while and it ended up being hormonal, and just different people would give me different issues. Maybe it's just because you're getting older. So I put it off for a while until I went to Brazil in September. And I remember I was on a flight, a long flight. It was overnight. It was like 10-hour flight from Dallas to Brazil. And I had for dinner that night, I think I'd had a sandwich, and then I didn't know they were going to serve us a dinner on the plane, and all I had was a few bites of my roll because I wasn't really that hungry after eating dinner in Dallas. And I remember it just getting stuck, and I began to burp and burp and burp, and I thought, what am I going to do? I was just like burping like crazy, and I never had anything like that happen to where I knew I wasn't swallowing it. It was just stuck. And finally, I had what was like, I don't know, you'd call it maybe like a GERD issue, like where it was horrible pain. Like I was in excruciating pain, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I didn't want to throw up, so I finally thought, you know what, I have some Pepto-Bismol. And I took a Pepto-Bismol, and it actually helped. And then I actually had to take 2 Pepto-Bismols, which, if you know me at all, I am not a med person. Like, I maybe take 1 or 2 ibuprofens a year, and I have to be in pretty severe pain to do that. Every once in a while I'll take a Pepto-Bismol or a Tums, but it really did help me. And then after that I was fine. And then while we were in Brazil, and that was in October, the beginning of October, I would notice at times that some of the meals I would have a challenge of just swallowing it. And I began to just really pray that God was just going to heal me. But then about a month later, I went to Mexico on a mission trip, and we were all staying in this camp, and the camp was cooking the food, and the food was really good, but every meal was corn tortillas. And I remember after that first meal, it was like, I couldn't eat any more corn tortillas. I can't eat tortillas anymore. And just swallowing that trip was just a challenge. And every time we would sit down to eat, I would just eat a few bites and be done. And I was very thankful at that time I could still eat like granola bars. And they kind of saved me that trip. And then from there, I went to visit a friend in La Paz, Mexico, and that was just a relaxing time, and I didn't really have many issues there. Just ate very slow, and yogurt was my friend at that time. I would have yogurt and really enjoyed that. And But when I got back, I finally thought I need to make an appointment to see the doctor. You know, I had been praying for a miracle, and well, I actually decided to see a doctor before I went in November. And at that time, you know, I just shared with her what was going on. Sometimes I can swallow and sometimes I can't. Sometimes I feel like food gets stuck. It doesn't matter what I drink or how slow I eat. And so she ordered me a swallow study. And I thought, okay, well, I don't mind. As soon as they could get me in was December 27th, right after Christmas. And I remember in my mind thinking, it's okay, I don't mind waiting, because I'm just praying that God's going to heal me and that this is just going to go away. And it didn't. It just progressively did not get better. And I remember going for that swallow study, and it was called a barium swallow study, where they make you drink this really nasty, chalky stuff, and then they, with an x-ray machine, watch it go down. And it was very slow. And so they start you standing up, and then they lay your bed. Well, they move it, and they move it, and they move it, and they watch it go down. And then at the very end, the last thing you have to do is swallow a pill. And it's just a little tiny, I would say, a little tiny pill. And that pill didn't go down. And that was the first time I heard the word achalasia. And the doctor made the comment. I said, what's the matter with me? And he's like, well, you don't have a hernia, and it doesn't look like you've had problems with GERD or reflux. And I was like, I haven't noticed it. And he's like, but I think you have what's called achalasia. And I'm like, what's achalasia? And I remember saying to him, how can I make that better? And he didn't really say a lot. And I said, can I change my diet? Is there something I can do? You know, and he didn't have a lot of answers for me. And he said, you probably need to follow up with a GI specialist. So after that, I got a referral to go to a GI, and the soonest they could get me in was the end of April. And this is December. And I was just like floored, like, you can't get me in before that? And no, they couldn't. Well, as time went on, it started getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where there were some days I couldn't really eat much anymore. And sometimes drinking was a challenge. So, and then my biggest challenge too was at night. Part of the challenge with achalasia is at night you cough all night, and you gag, and you wake up gagging in the middle of the night. And it doesn't matter what you've eaten or drank, or even if you just had some water, you wake up gagging. And it was just so uncomfortable. And I just remember like gagging on my own spit, and I'm like, this is just crazy. So I thought, I'm gonna call and see if there's any cancellations. A friend of mine, her husband had been going to a GI. He had been diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and I was like, who is his doctor? And so I tried to get into them, and as soon as they could get me in was July. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to start calling every day and see if they have cancellations. And I called, and they had a cancellation the next day. So on February 18th, I got in to see a GIPA, and I told her what was happening, and then towards the end of that appointment, I said to her, from that swallow study I did in December, he mentioned the name achalasia, and she's like, oh, no, you don't want achalasia. And I'm like, of course I don't want achalasia. That was just such a silly thing for her to say, but it wasn't me that said it, it was that doctor. So once she heard me tell her that I was waking up in the middle of the night gagging, and part of the challenge with achalasia patients quite often is they aspirate, and you can go into pneumonia, because aspiration means that you're swallowing down the wrong tube and it goes into your lungs. So the second she heard that, she's like, oh, we need to get you some tests. So she said, we're going to get an endoscopic test done. And believe it or not, within 2 days I was in having an endoscopic procedure done. And thankfully my insurance said it was okay. So then I had that done 2 days later on the 20th. And after that, the doctor said he tried to go down in between my esophagus and my stomach, and he said it was very tight. And he tried to open it up some, but it wasn't very successful. And he said, you need to have another test. It's called a manometry test. Well, can I just be honest with you? Manometry tests are really hard. They are they are just really hard. And so I had a manometry test, and I couldn't get in for that right away. Well, it wasn't that long, but my problem was my insurance company had to okay it before they would okay it. So finally on March 3rd, I went in for a manometry test. And a manometry test is when they stick this very thin tube, a sensor, down your nose all the way into your stomach. And you're not supposed to eat before this. And I hadn't eaten like for 24 hours, because when I'd gone into that EGD, they asked me, when was the last time you ate? And I said, I followed all their rules. In fact, I stopped eating like 24 hours before the EGD test. And they still found food in my stomach. I mean, my esophagus, not my stomach. So anyways, the manometry test, the second she started putting it down, I gagged. And oh my gosh, I lost everything that was left in my esophagus. It was pretty gross. And, but she did finally get it down. And what happens is you have to drink kind of laying back, reclining, some Gatorade, and then you have to drink, and you have to continue to drink as, I'm going to scoot over a little bit because of the sun, but you have to keep drinking, and they test your swallowing abilities. And she kept saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was not okay. That was the worst experience. Now, I just be honest with you, I've had 7 children with no medications, like birthed 7 children. And that was hard. Manometry is pretty close to as miserable. Not quite, it didn't last as long. But once she was done, she's like, you're gonna get help. You're gonna get help soon. I hope you get help soon. She was the sweetest lady. She showed me that on a normal swallow, you have these little L things, and it goes over. Mine wasn't. It was just red, and it was straight down. So that meaning wasn't swallowing. And so after that, we had planned to go on a trip, and Gordy and I, we had planned to go visit our kids in South Dakota and in Missouri, and went to visit a friend in Illinois. And so we traveled, and that trip, some days were okay, other days were horrible. And that was the first time I remember going for like 24 hours without being able to eat or drink. When we were heading to Illinois, I had eaten somewhere the night before, and I went close to 30 hours without even being able to drink or eat anything. Even trying broth, nothing would stay down. Every time I would put anything in my mouth, I'd immediately have to run and throw it up, and it was miserable. And then, I just began to pray and ask God, and I asked some friends to pray for me, because I couldn't swallow anything. And then thankfully that evening, I was able to swallow some food. And then after I began to swallow again and drink, I could continue to eat. And that night I ate and drank quite a bit. Well, the next morning I thought I'll try some yogurt, because yogurt should go down, but oh my gosh, I lost all of that yogurt. And then I did okay, but I tried some pizza, and pizza, no. And so when we left there, I was pretty miserable for another 24 hours of no eating or drinking. Just everything that went into my mouth, I would throw up. And then we had to stay a couple nights in Kansas because there was horrible blizzards. It was an exciting trip home. And then we had to stay an extra night in Colorado because our car broke down, but that's a story for another time. We ended up having to buy a new car in Denver, Colorado area, and we finally got home. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to call and see if I can get into my doctor. Well, it's impossible to get into my doctor unless you call 4 weeks ahead. She's very popular, so I was like, I'll take any appointment. And they got me in to see a PA down in another city in Olympia. I live in the Lakewood, Tacoma area, and I didn't mind driving, and that PA was so wonderful. And I said, my biggest question is, and I'm just going to back up a second, but they had recommended I have surgery after my manometry test, and they diagnosed me, and they said, you have achalasia level 2, and we recommend that you have surgery. Well, the surgeon that this GI recommended, my insurance company wouldn't pay for it. And I thought, you know what, I'll appeal it. And they still wouldn't pay for it. So then I had to get a different surgeon, and I didn't even know, would this surgeon even know what I needed. So when I went to that PA, I said, the main reasons I was coming to you is just want to let you know there's been a couple times recently where I can go 30 hours without eating or drinking. It's miserable. And then I just need to know if this surgeon, does this kind of surgery. And so she looked it up, and he was a GI surgeon. And she's like, I'm going to call him, and I'm going to, send him a note and talk to him. Well, I would say probably a week or so later, I got a call back from her saying she had talked to the surgeon, and yes, the surgeon does know about achalasia, and he does do the surgery that I need. And she talked to him, and within a day, I had a call from that surgeon. Originally, I didn't even have a surgeon appointment to see a surgeon until the beginning of May. And I was calling like almost every day to see if they had any cancellations. I'm sure they got tired of hearing from me, but I often tell people, if you're not advocating for yourself, that's not good. So I did get in, and I had, after that, a surgery appointment, a phone call set up for April 16th. And that call, get this, I had my phone in my hand, and the phone didn't ring. And then all of a sudden I saw a message, and I missed the call. I'm just going to be honest with you. I freaked out. Like, I'm finally going to get to talk to the surgeon, and I'm finally going to get an appointment, and all of a sudden I've missed the call. And my husband, he works from home, and he was in the room next to me in his office, and I was just like, I missed the call. And I mean, I am freaking out. And the surgeon did leave a message and said he would call me back. Well, I actually thought, well, while I'm waiting, I was in the process of cleaning out my closet. I have a very small closet, and usually I go and put all my winter clothes away and then bring my summer clothes out. And so I thought, I'll just work on this. Well, it took almost 40 minutes for that doctor to call me back. And, I just spent some time praying, and I was like, God, what's the matter with me? I'm freaking out about a surgeon's call. And finally I felt like the Lord, the small, still voice, trust me, Sue, trust me. And I was like, okay, God, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. And sure enough, that surgeon called back, and he made the comment. He's like, I told you I'd call you back. And I'm like, I know, but I've been, waiting to talk to you. Anyways, that surgeon on that phone call, he made, they have a survey that they give people that have achalasia, and 12 being the worst you can absolutely be, I scaled to a 9 on that test. And that surgeon also told me, because I had gone almost 40 hours without nothing to eat or drink, and I was very weak, and I almost fainted twice. I was getting ready to go to the ER. I told my kids, my husband, I said, next time this happens, I'll go to the hospital. And I was really close that day. And finally, that evening around, 5 or 6 o'clock, I was finally able to drink something. And then finally, I couldn't really eat that day, but the next morning I was able to eat and drink again. But he's like, Sue, if you ever go that long again, you need to go to the hospital and get it IV. And I was like, okay, I will. Thankfully, I haven't had that happen. I mean, I have gone probably 24 hours at least with nothing to eat or drink. And so all that to say, he told me that day, we're going to get you in for surgery 4 to 6 weeks. And I was like, whoa, that's soon. I wasn't thinking it would go that fast. And he's like, no, for achalasia patients, we get them in as soon as we can. And so I actually surveyed him a bit too, and just asked him questions. And I guess that he is the only specialist in our group. We have Kaiser Permanente insurance that does this surgery, and he only does 1 or 2 a year. That's how rare this disease is. This disease, achalasia, is like 1 in 100,000 people get it. It's very rare. They don't really know what's the cause of it. There may be a virus that causes it in some countries in South America, but usually sometimes it's associated with autoimmune diseases, but they don't really know. It's been around for a long time. I think the first cases were back in the late 1800s, and it usually affects people in between the ages of 20 and 60. I just turned 61. In fact, today is my birthday. I'm 61 years old, so I was just right there on that cutoff. And so anyways, after talking to him, later that day I had a call, and my surgery was scheduled for May 12th. So now I'm going to be going in for a surgery. It's called a healer myomeny, and it's thankfully laparoscopic. And what they'll do is they'll go down my esophagus and they will cut some of the muscles inside of my esophagus, and so that what achalasia does, and I'm going to go back to that for a second. Achalasia, what happens is your food stays in your esophagus, and then the muscles of your esophagus don't work anymore, so they're not pushing your food down. But even if they did, the bottom of your esophagus has a muscle called the LES muscle. And with patients that have achalasia, the LES muscle stops working and it closes. And so no food can get through. So you can eat, but it all stays in your esophagus. So what you do is almost every day, and I would say there's only been one day in the last probably 60 or 70 days that I haven't thrown up. Every day. Sunday I didn't throw up on Sunday, but I did actually Sunday night, but after I went to bed. But a whole day of not throwing up was a miracle. That is a miracle for me. But what happens with the surgery, let's go back to that for a second, is they will loosen up the LES muscle at the bottom of the esophagus so that food will go through. And then what they'll do is they'll do a fundoplication wrap, and where they'll take the end of your esophagus and wrap your stomach around it some, so that you won't get GERD. Because if you open up that hole, then all the gastric juices from the stomach can go up it, and so you can get GERD, reflux, and that's not good either, because that destroys your esophagus too. So I had a lot of questions for the surgeon. There's different procedures that you can have after finding out what I had. Of course, you go on YouTube, you go and you listen to stories and do a lot of research on it. And so I knew that there are two surgeries that they offer: is the myomeny and the and it's called the POEM procedure. And I was kind of leaning towards the POEM procedure, but just from different people that I've read, the majority of the people that have that procedure end up having the myomeny eventually. But I'm just going to be honest with you. If you've known me for long, you know I am a praying person. I believe in miracles. I have seen miracles. I have seen so many miracles. I've prayed for people and they're healed, and just crazy miracles, like people's knees that I can feel them going back in, and tumors I've seen disappear on people. I've prayed for so many people, and I'm pretty sure that that's part of the reason why for a while there I didn't even go in for any kind of doctor's appointments or treatments, because I honestly just believed that God was going to heal me, and it didn't happen. And I'm not giving up, though. In fact, I was talking to my son today. He called me to wish me a happy birthday and just was praying with me. And I said, my biggest prayer request right now, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little emotional, but I really don't want to have the surgery. I do, on the one aspect, I do want to have the surgery because I will be able to eat again. Yes, I've lost quite a bit of pounds. My goal this year, and get this, my goal this year was to lose weight. And I'm close to about 35 pounds gone now. Yes, I wanted to lose weight, but not this way. But whoever wants to lose weight, certain ways, losing weight is hard, but this has been extremely hard in the fact that like I said, I can't eat or drink some days, and it's when you can't drink that it just gets so hard. Back to the surgery, though. I'm praying, and this is what I was telling my son today, that before they do the surgery, he'll do an endoscopic procedure. And I'm just believing for a miracle. I know God can do miracles, and I am believing that when that doctor goes in and looks at my esophagus, it will be healed in the name of Jesus. And so my request to you, and if you're still watching this 25 minutes later, that you'll pray with me and believe that God will heal my esophagus. So I just wanted to give a complete history of my story, and I will let you know when I'm healed, and just continuing to believe for that healing. So I just thank you for listening to me, and keep me in your prayers. God bless you all. We'll check back again soon. Bye-bye.